Okay, let's talk about nonsense word fluency. This measures students' ability to identify and blend letter sounds. This is kind of what your screen will look like. Similar to phoneme segmentation, if you've done that, we tap under the letter if the students get it correct. If they say a sound and it's incorrect, we'll tap it again, tap the actual letter after we've underlined it to show that they got that sound wrong. And then if they get it wrong, but then they correct within 1, 2, 3 seconds, then we will tap it to make it turn green to show a self-correct. Students do have a booklet for this assessment that they will need to be looking at. We do this assessment in middle of the year kindergarten, all of first grade, and in beginning of the year second grade. This is an example of student materials. This is what the student's page will look like that they are looking at. They do not look at your screen, they only look at the page. Let's take a quick little look at scoring one that's correct. On the student's page, it has the word be okay. This is a nonsense word. It says b-a-k. If students read each of those sounds in isolation, you just tap under the sound. If the students blend any of the words, any of the sounds in the word, then you're going to mark exactly how they do it. Es, drawing a line under the es because they put it together. If they just read it as a word, Jaff, you have two options. You can draw a line under Jaff to show they read the whole thing, or there's now a green button at the bottom that says WWR. That means whole word read. If they read the whole word, they don't do any repeating or sounding out. All you've got to do is tap that whole word read and it will automatically move you to the next word. That's just for speed because some of our smarties like to move through those words quickly and it's hard to keep up if you're drawing lines and having to hit the next button. So let's go check out some of the common scoring rules. If it's a self-correction, after you've tapped it wrong, you can tap the letter again to rescore the response to make it show self-correction. If the student doesn't read any correct letter sounds in the first row, the device prompts you to discontinue. Go ahead and do that. If be considerate of articulation and dialect sounds and the way students speak. And hesitation. If the student responds sound by sound, mixes sounds and words, or sounds out and recodes, allow 3 seconds, then tap the letter incorrect and provide the correct letter sound. So that means if they're sog, they're going g, or they're mixing up sounds sog or soj, and they just can't quite get it. You can point, they've got point to that last one, be like g, and then move on to the next one. You count it wrong, but go ahead and provide it so that they're ready to move. If the student responds with whole words, give them 3 seconds if they hesitate. Then tap the letters incorrect and provide the correct word. So they get to sog, they don't say anything. You sit there for 3 seconds. Then you say sog, and you tap the letters incorrect and keep going. Here's an example. The student gets to this word. They say k, and then they just sit for 3 seconds. You can go and ahead and say I, but mark it wrong. You don't draw a line because they didn't say anything. You just mark it wrong. Then if they say v, go ahead and mark that correct. Students reading word by word. They say kiv, then they get to jack and they stop. Wait 3 seconds. They still haven't said anything. Then you go ahead and say jack. You're going to tap the letters because you said it, but you're not going to mark anything down here because they didn't say anything. Here's a self-correct scoring. The word, of course, is PIM. Sounds are P, I, M. But the student says P, am. So initially you would mark P, am, and you would tap I, and it would turn red because they said am. But then when they read it as a whole word, they say PIM. So you can tap that sound again because they fixed it the second time around. This happens a lot. Student says Z, D. I mean B. So you would have tapped it wrong the first time and then tapped it green to show that they fixed it. Okay, words read in isolation. I showed you this one earlier. This is the most of the scoring you do will look like this: either isolation, some sounds in isolation with others blended, or a whole word. And like I said, there's a whole word button now that you may push as well. Any sound that is incorrect, you're going to tap the letter. The word was sec. They said ick. Mark that they'd said the I sound, but then tap the E to show it was not the correct sound. The word is nez. They say n-ez, nez. Mark the M because it was supposed to be mez. But you also mark everything they said. You mark when they sounded it out, and you mark when they made it a whole word. The word is live. The student says fit. Well, you're going to mark that they read it as a whole word, but then mark the f, which is actually supposed to be ul, and the v, which they said t. You'll mark that incorrect. Repetitions. Ah, og. So you mark ah, then you mark og as one whole word. Student error made while recoding p, I, m is what it's supposed to say. They say p, I, m and got it right the first time, but then they said Pam when they read it. So you'd have to go back and mark that sound wrong. Omission of a sound. The word is cug. They say k, g. They leave out the U completely. Just don't mark anything here whatsoever. They didn't get it wrong. They just didn't say it. So mark what they said correctly and move on. The word is cag. Students read it out of order. You're going to mark what they say first. They say the g first, so mark the g first. They said a second, and they said k third. That's what it would look like. Students read right to left. They say vep when it's supposed to be pev. You're going to mark that they read 3 sounds as one word, but you're going to mark these 2 incorrect because they switched them. Sometimes students will add sounds to the end. Ha, I, f, t. There's no t to score, so we would just disregard it. They read the word. It's supposed to say stop, but they add a sound in the middle. They say stop. Mark that they read it, and then mark the little slash at the end to show that they added a word. Sometimes students put that schwa sound when they sound it out. So instead of saying p, they say p. Or instead of saying k, they're going to say k. We do it too sometimes, and a lot of times that's the way parents have taught them. So we're going to disregard that schwa sound and count it as if they were saying it perfectly. P, e, p, e, k. See, it's hard for me to do. Afterwards, this is the screen that will come up, and you can see the little running man if they have made it or they need to be. And this one has 2 scores, the letter sound score and the whole word score. So students will receive a score based on if they said all the sounds. If they read the whole word, they automatically get 3 or 4, whatever, however many sounds the word had. I guess, well, nonsense word fluency is always 2 or 3. They automatically get that number of sounds plus 1 whole word read. However, if they sound it out first and then read a whole word, they only get the letter sound score. They do not get anything for whole word. You only get whole word if you read the whole word correctly without having to sound it out. If you read it twice, like here, daff, daff, you would mark it twice, and they would not get a whole word read score for that one. And like I mentioned, there's now a whole word read button. So if they just read FEP and then start moving on to DEJ, TAS, you're just going to start tapping WWR. If a student doesn't read from left to right, one time you can say, go this way, and sweep your finger to show them the correct way. If the student says letter names instead of sounds, you can say one time, say the sounds, not the letter names. If the student reads the word first, then says the letter sounds, you can remind them one time that they only need to just read the word. And if after the first row, the student reads letter sounds correctly but does not attempt to blend or recode, you can say, try to read the words as whole words one time. And these are in quotation marks because these are the exact phrases that you should use. And these one-time reminders will appear on your screen before you start assessing to refresh your memory. If you would like to practice nonsense word fluency, this is not a hard one to score, but the students can start to get fast, so you might want a little bit of practice so that you can keep up. You can go to mclasshome.com and log in and go to training and choose Dibble's Next Online Scoring Practice. And there will be a video, which is this presentation I'm showing you, and you can practice with examples to see how your scoring is. And when you have finished, you can, let's see, here it is. It will show you the correct way you should have scored it, and you can compare your scoring with their scoring. So remember, when doing nonsense word fluency, we're assessing the alphabetic principle and basic phonics. We're scoring sound by sound, blended sounds, and whole word responses. CLS is the score given for the number of sounds, correct letter sounds, that the student reads correctly. And WWR, whole words read, is the score given for the number of nonsense words read correctly as whole words on the first attempt. Good luck with your nonsense words.